Good evening. I was still on mute, sorry. Good afternoon, yes. Thank you very, very much for inviting me for this meeting and for this exchange. And we have gone through very, very interesting weeks when it came to the elections, and I'm happy to share about that. And of course, later on, we can discuss about the legitimacy of postponing or not postponing. What I can tell you before I start, I've prepared a short presentation for you to give you a few impressions from South Korea. As far as I know, it was never discussed to postpone elections, but what we really had were some security measures to an extent that was really amazing on the very day of the elections. And what we also had was a very, very special way of campaigning, very unique for this country. So, George, shall I just start my presentation?
Yes, of course. Yes,
okay.
Of course. Please feel free. You can share your screen. Yes.
I will try to share that presentation.
Yes,
and
we can
you
see.
should now be able to see that. And I guess you can also see my mouse. I will need that. Okay, that were very special times. It's only a little bit more 10 weeks ago, we had these elections here on April 15. They, of course, were long planned ahead, and the starting point for the ruling party, the Democratic Party, which had a majority but had to organize the majorities when it in the parliament when it came to the making of laws. The situation was extremely poor, and in the winter 2019 and 2020, the survey results reached an absolutely low point for the president, who is also the head of the Democratic Party. We had parliament election. We have the presidential elections are different elections. But of course, this decided if he would end his term, the last 2 years of his term, as a lame duck, or as a person being able really to make laws and politics. So there was a big disappointment among the people because many of the promises could not be kept. I suppose you can all read that, so I don't have to read it for you, but the approval rate was in free fall in winter 2019-2020. Then COVID-19 came. You might remember that the first cases were in China were in January 2020, and the authorities here, be it politically or also the people, were on alarm, and they reacted very quick. The approval rate for the president was so poor, and this always means, if I speak about the president, this always means also for his party was so poor that there even was an impeachment in February 2020, and one of the allegations was the poor corona crisis management. It's limited. You can see that on the graph. The petition after 4 weeks had 1.5, almost 1.5 million signatures. And then what then followed was 6 crucial weeks. Again, we had these elections on April 16th, and here you can see the daily new cases on the right-hand graph. We had the crown of the crisis was on the 29th of February with 909 new cases, and the concern of the people was really, really very strong. And this went down in only 6 weeks from then a little bit more than 6 weeks, to 27 new cases on election day. It was the 15th, sorry, not the 16th. And yeah, the president and his party won a lot of respect for the management of the crisis. It was a very prompt government response. It was very decisive. It was transparent, and very important, the transparency means that they also always mentioned the hard facts, even when we had this high in the infection rates and when the people's concerns were so big. They always told the truth, and they always acted very, very clearly. And at that time, we were on the second place behind China in the ranking list of the infections in the worldwide. Today we are, I think, I just looked it up yesterday, at position 62. Oops, sorry. So these were really 6 crucial weeks. We had the election campaign. I told you that there were no considerations of postponing the elections, but these were very special election campaigns with the social distances. Normally you have rallies, you have the shaking hands, you have the food, the group photographs, and embracing each other. So it's very physically normally when we have campaignings here, and there was nothing at all, no marches, no demonstrations, no handshaking. So you just, and it has been established now that we say hello to each other with the elbows, or maybe with our fists or whatever. So this still goes on. No group pictures, nothing, because if you did not, I did not understand. Was that addressing me? I just continue, yeah. If you did not respect social distancing, you really were on the loser's side. And for the campaign, I brought you some pictures. So you had these speeches without any audience. You can see on the right picture, the campaigning from list number 6, and barely nobody listened. And I was just out with my camera that morning and doing some shopping for groceries, and saw some of these cars. This is the usual picture, but normally people convene around these cars and applaud and cheer for the candidates. Nothing of that was. It was really isolated. And so some of the activities moved to the social media. I would not have expected, as Korea is really very open to all digital matters, how conservative and some kind of helpless this was. On the left photo, you can see how candidates help in disinfection measures, or the campaign of list number 2, the United Future Party from the opposition. They had an having soup in cheap restaurants campaign, things like this. I have to admit, I did not really understand that, and I did not find that very thrilling. Election day, I'm coming to an end soon. That was really impressive what was done there. I announced a few pictures on that, with lots of social distancing on the left photograph and center photograph in the center. Fever, temperature was measured, was taken. Everybody had to wear a mask. Millions of plastic gloves were distributed, and polling booths were disinfected all over the day. And you may ask yourself, well, what did they do with those who were still under quarantine? They were allowed either to cast their ballot online, or to come to the election after the locations already had closed. So that was exclusively open for those who are still under quarantine. And so this special election day, we did not know if people would go out to cast their ballot. It was a record turnout in the end. Almost 15,000 polling stations had to be equipped, as I described it on the photographs in the last slide. The special regulations, and we did not know, let's say, if elderly people do not dare to come to the election, what would that mean for the parties to be elected for parliament? It was in the end a landslide victory of the Democratic Party of 60%, and it was very, very special. It was, I think, a historical election day, and this is the landslide victory result in a graph with a majority which is very comfortable for the president for his last 2.5 years in office now. So he can do more or less whatever he wants. And maybe interestingly enough, as we had this, I don't know if you followed that, this little crisis with North Korea, which is rather often here last week and in the last weeks, with a rather grim situation and lots of tensions on the peninsula, the approval rate is going down again, but the election is over, and I thank you for your attention. And have to try to come out of that.
Thank you very much. It took me a moment to gain back control. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm happy that you took over again. Thank you.
It was very interesting, and thank you very much for this presentation, because it gave us